Hey, when are you coming here to live with me? Stop whining. My husband snapped impatiently over the phone. I'm not going to live with your mother, I replied firmly, but he refused to listen. Give the house to my sister, Bailey. She's coming back this week. We're out of time. His voice grew increasingly commanding. Why should I sacrifice my home for your family? I asked, stunned by his audacity. Then let's get divorced, Vincent snarled. And at that moment, my marriage fell apart. His words were so cruel they changed everything. I decided no one would ever control my life again. I am Stella, a 30-year-old full-time housewife, dedicating my days to supporting and managing our household. I married Vincent 2 years ago, and since quitting my job after marriage, my husband has been the breadwinner. However, our peaceful life took a turn for the worse after my father-in-law's passing, leading to my mother-in-law moving into our apartment. To my surprise, I found out about her move just a day before she showed up. My husband casually mentioned her upcoming arrival, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. It caught me off guard. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He shrugged. I forgot to mention earlier that my mother would also be coming to live with us from tomorrow. Later, when he got home, he brought it up again. Make sure to prepare and clean up, he said, as though it were a simple errand. I was bewildered by the news. I thought she was coming over for a visit, I exclaimed. He shook his head. No, she's moving in. The decision was made without any prior discussion with me, and the very next day, my mother-in-law arrived with numerous luggages. It's been a while. I'm glad you look well, Ariana. Please come in, I greeted her. However, she seemed displeased for some reason. As she entered, she frowned and said, Why didn't you come to pick me up? It's common sense to meet your mother-in-law at the station. While carrying the hefty luggages, I explained, I didn't know what time you'd arrive. She snapped, In that case, shouldn't you have contacted me? You're so thoughtless. I apologize, I said softly. This is why they say some daughter-in-laws are useless and inconsiderate, she continued to grumble. The mother-in-law settled heavily on the sofa. Despite being a guest in our home, she acted as if she owned the place. I couldn't believe it. From that day forward, her snide remarks grew even sharper the moment my husband left for work. The onslaught began. Stella, why are you sitting there? She barked. Do the dishes. You should have finished the laundry in the morning. That's common knowledge. I'm sorry. I'll do the laundry once the dishes are done, I replied. You have the wrong priorities, she said dismissively. In my house, it's a rule to do laundry immediately after breakfast. Haven't your parents taught you not to make excuses? I had my own daily routine, but it seemed that Ariana couldn't understand that I wasn't refusing to do the work. Even if I did things her way, she would still find fault and complain every day. The daytime hours alone with her were especially challenging. One day, I had an epiphany on how to end this living hell with my mother-in-law. The plan was to move to the house I inherited from my father and live separately. My father retired early a few months ago, and my parents started a new life in the countryside, passing their house on to me. Fortunately, that house isn't too far from our current apartment, and we were planning to move eventually. Living with my mother-in-law had reached my limits, so I decided to talk to my husband about moving sooner. Vincent, can we talk for a moment? I asked. What's up? Anything happened? He replied. Remember the house my father gave us? I said. What do you think about moving there? Oh, that house. We did talk about moving there someday. Why the sudden decision? He asked. Well, I've been having some difficulties with your mother, I confessed. She never mentioned anything, but I can't bear living with her anymore. That's why I'm seriously considering moving. Observing that the new place isn't too far, I suggested, we can move there and let your mother stay in the current apartment. Surprisingly, my husband agreed. After informing Ariana, we decided to make the move a week later. Honestly, I anticipated some opposition from her, but she accepted our decision with a big smile. Goodbye, Vincent and Stella, my mother-in-law said. I'm so sorry you had to make this sudden decision to move. Don't worry about it, I replied. It's wonderful that your father gave you the house. He's very sweet, she added. Thank you, I said. Please visit us sometime. Of course, Ariana smiled. It's not too far from here, and I hope you visit me regularly too. I will, I promised. After the conversation, I headed to our new home with my husband, feeling relieved that I wouldn't have to endure snide remarks anymore. I could now live freely at my own pace. Although I had initially feared my mother-in-law's opposition, consulting with Vincent brought me peace. However, my peace did not last. Despite being able to keep my distance from my mother-in-law and reduce stress, my husband started coming home late. It wasn't just the late returns. There were days when he wouldn't come home at all. He defended his actions, saying, "I'm worried about my mother." But it became too frequent. Without informing me, he went to her house, had dinner with her, and sometimes stayed overnight, disrupting my daily life. This can't go on, I thought one day. I sat him down for a talk. "Vincent, you've been coming home really late lately, and sometimes you don't even come home at all," I said indignantly. "Is that so?" "I'm just worried about my mother," he replied. "That's not the point. At least let me know beforehand that you'll be late, so I'll know I don't have to prepare dinner," I continued. "Since you're a housewife and always at home, you can eat the leftovers for lunch the next day, right?" he said dismissively. "So you're saying I should just accept everything quietly because I'm a housewife? Are you saying we shouldn't talk about this?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Isn't that the truth? Housewives just relax at home," Vincent shot back. What are you saying?" I asked incredulously. "Anyway, I'm worried about leaving my mother alone. Bailey will be coming back soon, and I need to discuss some things with her," he added. "Wait, Bailey is coming back? What does he need to discuss with her?" I thought, curious. I asked my husband, "What do you mean by that?" "I'm moving Bailey here to live with us," he answered nonchalantly. "Live together?" I repeated in disbelief. "Yes, she kept saying she wanted a big house like the one she lived in abroad. That's why I thought of letting her stay in this house," Vincent explained. I blinked in disbelief, struggling to process his words. Was he serious? My sister-in-law was going to live in this house? I had barely escaped from Ariana's constant complaints, and now his sister, Bailey, was going to live in this house. I couldn't wrap my head around it. This was the house I inherited from my father. It felt unnatural. "It's the only big house that would satisfy Bailey, my husband," he insisted, as if that justified everything. "The apartment where we used to live is now where my mother stays, and it's too small for 4 people, he continued. "But I never intended to live with Bailey," I protested. "I don't plan to live together either. I intend to give this house to Bailey," Vincent declared. What? Why?" I demanded. "Because we plan to move back with my mother. Bailey can use this house freely," he explained. I was taken aback by my husband's unreasonable proposal and felt like fainting. Despite my repeated insistence that I had no intention of living with my mother-in-law, my husband eventually became furious. "Can't you be a little more considerate? You can live because of me, so just do as I say," he snapped. "Enough is enough of your jokes. This house is precious to me, inherited from my father. Why should I give it to Bailey?" I cried. "Such a wonderful house is wasted on you, isn't it? I've already told Bailey that I've got her a large house. It's too late to say otherwise now," he said coldly. "I wasn't consulted in any of this decision. Either way, I can't accept it." "You're always complaining. Enough. Calm down and think. I'll go back to my mother's for a while," Vincent said angrily, slamming the door and leaving. Left alone in the room, tears streamed down my face. I couldn't understand why my husband decided everything on his own. It's unimaginable that he intends to give away the house I inherited from my father to my sister-in-law. Every day my husband sent me messages, asking if I had calmed down and to come back soon. Each time I had to firmly tell him that I had no intention of agreeing. Then one day, he said something shocking over the phone. "Hey Stella, when will you come here and live with me?" "Stop nagging," he said impatiently. "I've said it so many times. I have no intention of living with Ariana," I said firmly. "Move out of there and come live with me and my mom and give that house to Bailey. I've already told Bailey. Stop being selfish. She might be coming back this week, so there's no time," he continued. "Why should I give up my house for your family? I inherited this house from my father. Don't decide on your own," I retorted. "Who do you think you're talking to?" "Even my mother is furious. I'm at my wit's end," he yelled. "That's not my problem. You're ignoring my feelings," I responded. Vincent let out a big sigh over the phone, clearly frustrated. Then he said something shocking. If you can't listen to me, then let's divorce. Hand over the house to Bailey. Leave by tomorrow, he threatened. At that moment, my love for my husband quickly faded. Threatening me with the word divorce was utterly despicable. I couldn't possibly forgive him for using divorce as a threat, without considering my feelings. I couldn't allow these people to have their way. Burning with anger, my husband continued to speak with a triumphant and dominating tone. Listen, if you don't leave by tomorrow, I'll really divorce you. Got it? He warned. Wait, are you serious? I asked, shocked. Of course I am. You don't have a choice. What will you do if you, a housewife, get divorced? You can't survive, he sneered. Enough. I get it, I said calmly. Good. Hurry up and move over here. My mother is looking forward to disciplining you, Vincent said smugly, and hung up the phone. After that call, I made up my mind and decided to seek help from my father for a plan. The next day, everything was ready for the move. I called my husband to find out when my sister-in-law would arrive. By the way, I'm curious about when Bailey will be back, I asked him. She'll be back tomorrow. Why are you so obsessed with Bailey? He asked, then added, between you and me, she seems to have made a lot from stock investments. I see. So if you provide her with a house, maybe you can ask for financial help, I said sarcastically. That's so like you. Anyway, you need to leave that house by today, he ordered. Don't worry, I've already moved out, I replied calmly. I knew it. You don't actually want a divorce, do you? Naturally, you wouldn't survive without an income, he said smugly. But all of this is coming to an end, I continued. What? What do you mean? He asked, genuinely surprised. We're only having this conversation because we're still married, I concluded. Wait, what? He stammered. I can only think about divorce now, I declared. My husband was clearly shaken by my words. You said you'd move out and come live with me, but if you're not in that house anymore, then where did you go? He asked, confused. Why would I live with a husband who makes all the decisions and a mother-in-law who constantly belittles me? I retorted. I told you, I've already moved out. I followed your instructions, I added. Stop playing games. Where are you now? He demanded, his voice edged with panic. Actually, I'm at my parents' house, I answered. Why? He asked, completely bewildered. I moved to my parents' rural home. I don't plan on returning to where you guys are, I concluded. You should have told me that sooner, he said, a hint of relief in his voice. If I could just give that house to Bailey, it doesn't matter where you live. It would require $1,400,000, I continued. $1,400,000? He repeated, shocked. I put the house I inherited from my father up for sale, and if you truly want to give it to Bailey, buy it for $1,400,000 and then hand it over, I remarked. Are you joking? He asked desperately. I'm serious, I replied. The house was still in my father's name, so I asked him to sell it in reality. My father had always said, if something happens, contact me. You can live or sell this house as you like. I'll help you. As a result of the valuation, a price of $1,400,000 was proposed, which I gladly agreed to, and put the house on the market immediately. My husband probably never saw this coming. He spat out insults, consumed with anger. Why are you doing this without asking me? This is unforgivable, he snapped. I'm not asking for, nor do I need your approval, I shot back. We're getting divorced soon anyway. I don't care. Do you understand your position? He sneered. You'll be the one in trouble if we divorce. Since you don't have an income, you're just a housewife. I'd rather struggle on my own than be with you forever, I retorted. Listen, Bailey will be coming back soon. I told you I'm relying on Bailey's money, didn't I? He continued. So what? I asked coldly. Like I said, if you want to let dear Bailey live in that house, just buy it for $1,400,000. That is, if you can. What? That's impossible, he stammered. If Bailey has made a lot of money from her investments, I don't see why she can't afford it, I concluded. I don't know how much she made, but that's too much. She can never afford it, he muttered, making excuses with no hint of an apology, maintaining his domineering attitude. I felt it was foolish to spend any more time on him and unleashed everything I wanted to say. I'm done with you in this ridiculous mess. Did you think threatening divorce would make me give up the house? If you thought being a housewife meant I'd do whatever you say, You're so wrong, I said firmly. Hey, let's calm down and talk, he pleaded. I am calm, I replied firmly. Isn't it you who's panicking? I won't be controlled by you or your family anymore. Stay out of my life. Go to hell with your beloved mother, you mama's boy. I shouted loudly enough for the whole neighborhood to hear, then abruptly hung up the phone. Of course, I'd had enough of these insane calls from my husband, so I blocked his number. I immediately consulted my lawyer and decided to request a divorce. It took some time, but the divorce was finalized, recognizing my husband's fault. He and Ariana still live in that apartment. As for Bailey, they couldn't provide the large house she wanted, and she was furious, claiming this wasn't the deal, and made a U-turn back overseas. My ex-husband's plan to seek financial assistance from his successful sister fell through, and now he seems to be struggling financially, having to pay me alimony and support his mother. As long as he continues to live with such a selfish mother, his life will never be prosperous. On the other hand, I've moved to the countryside, and I'm enjoying peaceful days with my parents. I recently started a clerical job at a small company introduced by a neighbor. With that salary, I can live comfortably. I plan to live here for a while. I want to be by my parents' side as much as possible to repay the kindness they show me.